Looks like Daniel's going with it. He does shove it in. He gets it all in on the flop. Justin calls, and here we go.
And Daniel Negreanu just straight up punting it off.
Daniel Negreanu just finished second in a super high roller bowl for about 3 million. However, he's been called out by German pro Nitsche for punting it off in this last hand. My name is Andreas, and in this video I'm gonna show you guys what went down in this last hand of the super high roller bowl, what Dominik Nitsche really meant when he was talking about a non-GTO play by Negreanu and whether that was really the case. And if you want to see hand reviews like that in the future, don't forget to subscribe to the channel now to see more hands like that coming up here on this channel.
Probably go with the smooth call. He does.
500,000.
No. Oh, excuse me. Smooth $500,000.
Yeah, it's a disaster that hand. You do. Certainly, it's a low frequency check raise. If you want to check raise at all now, do you want to check raise 8-7, which is a pair and a 7? No, probably not, because like it makes sense to keep it in your check calling range. Right. Can you check raise it sometimes? Sure, yes, we'll go with roughly 10% of check raises. Was he doing this? No, he wasn't. He was just punting it off. He just wanted to run it. He probably felt like Justin was a better player, and then he felt comfortable check raising in that instance and getting it in.
Shots fired here by Nitsche. Let's have a look at whether those claims hold true. It's really not much about it. We're gonna look into PIO Solver and find out whether 8-7 is a check raise or not. First of all, I want to look at the in-position player here on 9-7-6 with 2 hearts. As you can see here, if we choose the 33% bet sizing, we will be c-betting about half our range in a heads-up pot with 50 big blinds depth. You can see that the best c-bets would be 10s, jacks and queens, and then of course the very strong hands as well. But those hands benefit basically from betting for value, and particularly 10s, jacks and queens wants to bet almost always because they face a lot of bad cards for that particular hand on the turn. They need a lot of protection, and also they get called by quite some worse hands like a 9-7 or 6 very often, whereas a pair like pocket aces here, can definitely comfortably check back a lot of the times because aces doesn't face an overcard anymore and therefore needs a lot less protection and makes actually for quite some nice betting lines on turns and rivers on a blank, or can quite comfortably call down on a lot of cards as well. On 2 streets instead of making this a 3-street game. On the other hand, checking becomes quite attractive with under pairs like 5s, 4s and 3s, which want to go to showdown against ace high and basically take that pot down that way. This is what should have gone through Negreanu's head. You can see all the EVs for all the hands. This is really what poker is all about, knowing which hands are high EV to continue and which hands are low EV to continue. You can see that the high EV hands are 10-8, 8-5, all the 2 pairs, and then also some hands like 8-7, of course. 8-7, a pair and an open ender. However, if you go to the line that would be preferred by the solver, it's going to be a 96% check call and only very, very infrequent raising, as Dominik Nitsche said, only 4% of the times with the settings that I set here. So you only want to raise, hands that have even higher EV, and for example, a hand like Jack 8 offsuit or Jack 8 suited would be a really great candidate. Why? Because if you raise Jack 8, think about it. If you hit a 10 on the turn, you have a very strong straight, and someone else could have hit another lower straight with an 8 on the turn as well. So if you have Jack 8 against 9-8 on a 10 turn, what would happen is that you could bet large and then, for example, jam the river or even overbet the river and get paid off by, the straight that hopes to chop with you or just tries to bluff catch. So, you're gonna have those payoff asymmetries where someone has a hand that he cannot fold, he has a straight, and you have the higher straight, and that's why check raising those hands in order to build a pot. This is all what check raising is about, in order to force out some hands or build a pot for your value hands with also reasonable amount of bluffs. When it comes to just pure bluffs, there's going to be some very few hands here, but actually not that many. There's mostly going to be hearts. There's almost no pure bluffs here because the board features a flush draw. So in the end, you're gonna have maybe some infrequent raising here with an ace of hearts 4, something like that. But other than that, you're just going to mainly look to check call your medium strength hands like the 8-7 and almost never check raise. In Negreanu's defense, I did node lock here in position to Cbet every single hand in his range. We can fairly assume that Bonomo is a good enough player to not do that, but let's have a look at this utopic scenario where in position player bets every single time and then what we would check raise with here. So if that's the case, if you see your opponent c-betting every single time over a sample of 50 hands, you can clearly assume that he is actually doing something really off. So in that case, check raising becomes way more attractive with way more hands that are also not that strong. And you can see that at this point, 8-7 gets check raised almost half the time. Now this number goes down, down, down a lot towards 5% when an opponent is actually having a reasonable strategy. It even goes down to almost 0 if Bonomo actually under c-bets, meaning that Bonomo chooses to c-bet less frequently than a solver would, then you would check raise 8-7 even less often and, you know, just go ahead and check call these hands. You can see that some of the 7x almost still don't get check raised at this point. They're still going to be heavily favored towards check calling at this point. So this is really not what you want to study. You want to really look at, you know, an opponent that plays a reasonable c-betting strategy. And if you want to know how insulting that would be from the EV standpoint for Bonomo to c-bet range, you can see that in this sim here, c-betting in position, we're going to go to the checking node. And you can see that the EV of the in position player is 26.9. And then if we go to this betting node here, we can see it's here 27.9. So that's like one difference. That's about roughly 4% more pot EV share for Bonomo if he doesn't c-bet range. So he's going to be an ambitious enough player to clearly not c-bet range here. And that's why the 8-7 check raise is clearly wrong. I will show you the entire hand in a second. Last but not least, I want to ask you guys to leave a comment in the section below if you have any thoughts on this final hand of the super high roller ball, or, you know, if you have some thoughts about Dominik Negreanu and Dominik Nitsche here and what happened after this hand. Also, let me know if anything was unclear to you when it comes to the PIO Solver analysis. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Also, don't forget again to like and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content, and then see you for the next one.
Over to Justin. As we've seen from the heads-up match thus far, how hard it is for both players to make a continue-worthy sort of holding. It's kind of our first one on any sort of big way. Middle pair, open-ended straight draws, rather big hand. Playing heads-up, no limit, and top set speaks for itself. Daniel could go a couple of ways. He'll probably go with the smooth call. He does.
500,000.
No. Oh, excuse me.
Smooth $500,000.
Smooth $500,000, and on a board as wet as this, Bonomo might be very well served to raise, and based on sizing considerations, we'll see how Daniel continues.
What a dream, by the way, when you're holding top set. Granted, it's not the nuts, but
it's straight in. There's a couple of hearts out there, but it's the essential nuts. I thought Daniel maybe could have just check called here. We're not doing that great
1.25 million.
versus the range that inflates the pot here. Nonetheless, his play is certainly understandable with middle pair in this open-ender. What does Daniel go with here? If you think you have some fold equity, I guess you can just mash it in. You're kind of in a flippy situation versus a lot of hands, but of course you're drawing to a chop versus straight and in poor shape versus set.
he has 3.9 million back.
A lot of chips.
Gonna use a time extension.
Yeah, tough. Don't think Justin is doing that with all that many flush draws. I think what we see a lot here from Justin is very, very good hands. Not to state the obvious, but 7-8 now is not doing that well versus range. I think to continue, I don't really want to jam. I wouldn't have check raised flop, so I'm a bit uncomfortable and kind of have to recalibrate. Maybe there is just too much out there to get away. I don't see Justin doing this with 6-8. Looks like Daniel's going with it. He does shove it in. He gets it all in on the flop. Justin calls, and here we go, Ali.
I got the other stuff.
Justin Bonomo is a 3-1 favorite to win this year's Super High Roller Bowl.
Good flop. We need a 5 or a 10.
Let's see what happens.
Here comes the turn. A king.
Isn't it? All right, one more card. 5 or a 10.
Daniel Negreanu.
Otherwise, Justin Bonomo will be your Super High Roller Bowl champion.
You said it, Daniel.
5 or 10. That's what we need.
See if he'll get it, Ali. You hunching, buddy? No hunch.
No, 8 outs once.
Come on,
Feels like a
one
set of
time. Give me
9s
5 or
holds.
10. One time.
But wouldn't it be exciting?
Let me squeeze it.
The river. Pairs the board.
Good match, bud.
Justin Bonomo.
Well done.
You played really well.
What a
Nines
player.
full of 6s.